Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Carla. I'm Dr. Carla. This is Carson, and we're really glad that you're here with us today. Our goal today is to talk about, excuse me, mental health related issues and hopefully begin to end that stigma that's surrounding them. So today we're going to talk about self-talk. It's one of my favorite topics. I do a lot of teachings about the power of I am. And so, when we're talking about mental skills, I mean, and in mental health too, but specifically around mental skills, talk to me about where you see or how you see self-talk showing up.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always talking to ourselves, whether we realize it or
Sure.
not. The way we talk to ourselves out loud in our heads, what we think, and then the way we talk about ourselves too, that is just, it impacts a lot of different things. And I think people don't realize the power that our thoughts have, especially when they're like aimed towards ourselves. Um, and so I think in sport and performance specifically, mistakes are, the first thing that comes to mind is just when you make a mistake, what's your first initial thought? And that's usually, oh my gosh, I suck. Oh
And
my
our
gosh, yeah.
self-talk usually is brutal. We would never talk to our best friend
Friend,
that way,
yeah.
and we sure wouldn't talk to our enemy the way we would talk. So yet somehow we think it's okay to just
Well,
brutally
we don't
rip at
even
ourselves.
realize it.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's, once you point it out, an athlete might get embarrassed and okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't say that. But it's so natural and all the time that we don't even know we're beating ourselves up like that.
I also find that sometimes people will say to me, "Oh, but I don't want to lie to myself." Wait, like, is there evidence that you're a piece of crap? Like, where? Show me the evidence that says that you're a loser. Like, wait, what
Yeah.
do you mean you don't want to lie to yourself? Like,
By saying like
but
I'm
you could
great.
you
Yeah.
could be you could be or like it's okay. Like even that, right? Like
Yeah.
keep it neutral. But like, there's something about it's okay to negatively, uh, wail on yourself verbally because somehow that's real, right?
You can
Would there
jump
be
to that end, but not the opposite.
yeah, not, and often definitely not positive, but even neutral is hard,
Right.
right? So it's a crazy concept, right?
Yeah.
But once they do get it, right,
It's powerful.
it's
Yeah.
mind blowing, right?
And I think that's kind of a struggle that I face when working with athletes is this notion that self-talk is simply affirmations and I am statements, which people like
Okay.
us can really appreciate. And, once they learn more, they certainly can get behind those. But at first conversation, they think, okay, sure, I talk poorly about myself to myself, but I'm not gonna, when I'm losing a game 3-0, I'm not gonna stand out there on the field and think to myself, I'm great. Things are okay. They think it has to be this cheesy, positive, things that they're never going to believe. And so,
But it sure as heck doesn't need to be. I'm such a loser. I've made this
right,
team lose, because that self talk doesn't work either, right?
exactly. And
Yeah.
I try to tell them, it can be, um, yeah, they think they can't get behind the cheesiness. And I'm like, well, make it realistic. You miss a free throw and you think, God, I suck. Instead of God, I suck, you don't have to jump to, okay, I'll make every free throw after this. I'm such a great shooter. Just say that was one free throw out of an entire game. Like
Right.
it's okay. Like just have
That's
those
done. Let's move on, right?
grounding thoughts.
Yeah.
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 Um, or
Or
you
I'm not going to let that mistake define me.
right.
Or, right, yeah, there's so many different ways to get around that, right?
Without going so far the other way that you're not gonna believe yourself. And if anything, you just feel silly and then that defeats the whole purpose too. So that actually reminds me of something I commonly teach my athletes is the instructional versus motivational.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
thinking about, in those moments, I always use the example of running because I was a runner. So when I'm in the 100-meter dash and I feel confident, I'm using my motivational self-talk. I got this. I'm gonna win, like whatever it takes
So
to,
get out of
yeah,
my way.
pump me
Eat
up,
my
right? Yeah,
dust.
I'm
Right. Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
good. And then you throw me on the 4x4, like that is a race that I really struggle in. And so telling myself, I got this, I'm great, I don't believe a second of that because I don't feel great. The 400 stinks. So instead, I use instructional self talk, which is, how do I take my mind off this sucks, I suck? Instead, I'm going to relax my shoulders, you know, get your knees up. Something that's more technical
Right.
that is still self talk, but it's not, this I am affirmation that I don't believe.
Right. I know so you do the sprints. I liked my long distances.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I'm out there doing my long distances, a lot of times I would be like, okay, maintain this, maintain your intervals. That's when you really, thrive. Um, you've prepared for this.
Yeah.
You know, don't forget that you know how to
Do
whatever,
X, Y, Z.
or
Yeah.
you've done this before. You
Yeah.
know, there's no reason why you can't do it again.
Right.
All those types of things really make a difference, right?
Hmm.
Um, it's interesting. Um, and so an assessment I like to use is the 9 Mental Skills by Jack Lessig out of Ohio, but he sees self-talk as kind of in that preparatory stage, right? So you get the foundational, you get the preparatory, then you get the action part. But that preparatory stage, like you're getting ready to shoot a free throw, or you're
Right.
getting ready to, go on stage to perform, or
Yeah.
you're getting ready to, right? And it definitely fits in there. But even in the examples that you and I have been uh, giving, it still is very much in the preparatory piece, because something happened and then we have to prepare to do the next thing,
Yeah.
right? So like a mistake happens,
Hmm.
right? And now we have to prepare to continue to play,
Yeah.
right? And so I think sometimes when, I like to kind of break up those mental skills into those sections like Dr. Lessig does, but people are like, well, I can only use self-talk when I'm getting ready to do a particular thing. I'm like, but anytime there's a transition, it's a
Which is
preparatory
constant.
moment.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
preparatory moment, right? So yeah, so it's not limited to any one part of the game or any one part of the performance,
Yeah.
right? Um, I know that you're an athlete as well, right? And so I guess I'm curious. Um, you had shared at one point with me that over the last year there was times that you were the consultant working with an athlete, and then at the same time the client working with a consultant,
Hmm.
right? And so I'm curious, how did the dynamic of self-talk show up there? And like kind of what, I know you said it was kind of a weird dynamic, so I'm
Yeah.
just curious how you see self-talk, both from the client's point of view and as the consultant's point of view.
Yeah. I mean, it was just funny working as a consultant and still being an athlete because when I would hear other athletes, you kind of mentioned this earlier with the best friend example. So I
Yeah.
hear the way they're talking to themselves, and it's so easy for me to recognize, that's not productive. What's a grounding
Sure, when
thought?
you look at everybody else.
And I'm like, what is real? Like I can walk them through that process of like, okay, I suck. Well, what's the evidence of that?
Right.
Okay, well actually I've been practicing all week, I'm fit, I'm strong, I can do this. And I can watch them go through that and have that like aha moment and feel great. But then I turn around and when I'm in the seat myself, it's like, even though I know this isn't true or that my favorite was just like, it's not that deep. Like even when I felt badly about my performances and I would tell myself, it's just track, it doesn't define you. I'd still feel horrible. And so I'm like, I'm doing all the things like ABC and I'm listening to the consultant and half the time she wouldn't even talk because I would play both roles because I'm like, and I know you're going to say this. And, I would do that. And so I think it all comes back to just working and practicing it. And even though I was studying it and watching others do it, like I needed to take the time to really practice the way I was speaking to myself, like deconstruct how I was talking to myself instead of just saying like, well, I know this isn't productive, but I suck. And, just acknowledging it. So,
Yeah, and this whole self-talk piece really comes back to self-compassion,
yeah.
right? And Kristen Neff, she's out of, I think it's the University of Houston, but she's in Texas, and so she has this whole big uh, study and work around self-compassion. And one of the components within her, definition of self-compassion is common humanity. This idea that we're not alone in this, right?
Yeah.
So, like your experience, what you described here is a perfect example of that common humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to recognize that it's, you're not alone, you're not the only one, right? You have a unique perspective to see that, but it's so important for people to understand that you're not alone. That self-talk issue is everybody, whether you're an athlete or a performer or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's such a huge issue. So to be able to give yourself some of that compassion, right? To start talking nice to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the big steps is to recognize that that common humanity,
Yeah.
it's across everybody,
Right.
right? So thank you for sharing. So remember, you can change your thoughts, discover your potential, and transform your life by focusing on your overall well being. So until next time, continue working on being the best you possible. Bye.